Hey, what's up? It's Coach Mark with Journeyman Fitness, and I'm making a video for you. We're going to talk about how to get rid of belly fat, and I just want to have a conversation. This isn't exactly the solution because I think everybody has their own individual thing to make them successful, but I want to start kind of introducing some concepts to you to kind of look at your health in a big picture. I think a lot of people get stuck up on, hey, I'm going to sign up for this gym, and I'm gonna sweat the weight off, or I'm gonna do this 3-day cleanse where I just drink juice, and then I'm going to fix everything. And what they don't see is kind of this big picture, right? And I think that if you start thinking of your health as a system, then you can start to see like, hey, there's so many parts that work together. I really need to fix many different parts rather than just this singular. Hey, I got to go to a gym, or I have to, eat more vegetables or something. Those are important, but again, it's just one cog in this giant machine. And as you could tell, in a former life, I was a mechanical engineer, and I still think like a mechanical engineer. And obviously, I still have the degrees to prove that I studied a lot. I studied a lot of math and physics and all that stuff. So thinking of these things like a system really makes sense to me. So I'm going to kind of let you come in on how I approach these things, and hopefully maybe I can turn some light bulbs on for you. So first off, when we think about, hey, listen, I have this belly that I need to get rid of. I've got this unsightly fat I'm trying to lose, and this is really important to me. My parents have cardiovascular disease, or I want to take my shirt off when I go to the beach, or just I'm really unhappy and I'm trying these pills and these 3-day cleanses, and what's going to work? Well, first off, the first thing we've got to fix is your mindset. So number one, start really telling yourself that there's no blame for all of this. Other people's genetics, other people, if you've got kids and you're looking at this 20-something-year-old no kids, and they've got all the time in the world, everybody has the same amount of time, right? The number of meals that you have throughout the day, the time of your eating, if I snack all day, I'm going to stoke the fire. All of these things can become excuses and become crutches for you to continue your kind of unsuccessfulness. So first off, just realize that it purely comes down to effort that you put into these things, right? You can change. Yes, genetics play a role. Yes, the number of meals that you have are part of this system, but it's not an excuse, right? It can't be an excuse. Set yourself up for success and say, if I commit myself, if I put in the work and I put the effort in, I will be successful no matter, all of these external factors, right? You can do this. This is like somebody who's just starting a job or just starting to make money. There's a lot of factors, but you are in control. Number two, what you want to think about is, you want to think about kind of at the end, right? The output that you're focusing on is your muscle, your energy, and obviously you want to get some weight loss. And so the inputs into these things, and here's the engineer in my brain really starting to talk, is what is the food that I'm putting in, how much, the kinds, and the balance, right? That I'm putting into my body, and then there's I've got to digest it. I've got to make this turn into muscle. I've got to make this turn into energy, and I've got to make sure that I eat sufficient but not too much so that I lose weight, right? And then obviously then you got the output. So that whole trash in, trash out equation really makes a whole lot of sense when you kind of look at it. So number one, let's talk about the food. What's coming in? This is just a few minute video. I'm not going to explain all of this stuff, but generally, depending on your activity level and your lifestyle, and maybe I should just go to the other side here. But depending on your lifestyle and your activity level, there's a number that's your maintenance, right? This is basically how much food you need to take in to maintain your level. So if you weigh 190 pounds, you're going to have, X amount of calories. You're going to have, 2,300 calories or something like that each day to maintain that 190 pounds, depending on how often you work out or the sports you play or whatever. So if you want to lose weight, generally what you're going to do is you're going to reduce the amount of food you have by about 25%. And as the weeks go on, this should generate some weight loss, right? In theory, right? This is part of this whole equation back here, which my body is covering. Number two, also what we want to make sure is that we're bringing in the right components of that food. We need to make sure that we're bringing in protein, carbs, and fat. And I have this like really basic graph here, but generally, for most people who've never thought about this, is when you eat certain foods, it creates a hormonal release, right? A hormonal response. And for most people, they're eating too many carbohydrates. And if you can read this at all, really what we need to do is create a balance of 40% of your carbohydrates, right? After this 75% is 40% of your calories are carbohydrates, 30% are protein, and 30% are fat, okay? For most people, that means you need to eat less carbohydrates, right? You need to have more protein, and then you need to have more fat. So this is more things from like avocado or oils or butter or anything like that. So or animal fat. Once you kind of dial it in, and I have a couple more videos about this. There's plenty of references, and then I'll add some links to this so you can do some research. But once you kind of have this in the ballpark, you also want to think of when I put food in, am I actually able to digest it? Is all of that food going into my system and being used, right? Or are some of these things, is the breakdown of food and the use for energy, is this part of the system broken? And so for a lot of people it is, right? They're eating a lot of food that's inflammatory, they're eating a lot of food that's really irritating their gut, and the breakdown of food is just not happening, and therefore the translation of food into muscle or food into weight loss or good energy is just not happening. So for a lot of people, what we've got to do is we've got to fix your gut. And that starts off with number one, determining am I eating foods that are irritating to me? And so if you've ever heard of an elimination diet, there's an opportunity for you to basically identify the foods that can cause you distress in your gut. And so first off, a couple of symptoms of distress in your gut could be things like gas, bloating, burping, constipation, diarrhea or nausea, particularly like right after you eat something. If you eat something and you immediately feel swelling or inflammation, or you feel like you have a brick in your stomach, that could be a big sign of one of the ingredients in that food is really distressing, right? And it should just be an immediate flag, hey, maybe this is not a food that is appropriate for me. So generally, as people kind of go through this process, there's a thing called an elimination diet. And basically what it does is it kind of takes down your entire kind of choices of food to a few building blocks that have been consistently non-inflammatory or non-bad for your GI. And removing a lot of the things that are pretty commonly distressing. And then after a few weeks, as your body kind of resets this baseline, you add one ingredient back into your diet, right? So some of the distressing ingredients could be things like wheat or gluten, soy, corn, legumes, citrus, nightshade. Nightshades could be like tomatoes or onions, pork, eggs, and then obviously anything that, kind of like I said, you eat it and then you immediately feel terrible. So I would also recommend staying away from things like fruit juices, hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, and then sauces, barbecue sauce, ketchup, mustard. A lot of those things are just basically just sugar and can cause a lot of high insulin release or just inflammation, or just makes you feel crappy. Okay? When you remove these things, it's going to take a couple of days to kind of get into the groove. And then, as you kind of reset this baseline, you may start noticing that, hey, the inflammation is going down, I'm removing the amount of water that's being held in my body, I feel better, I feel lighter, and then one at a time, you may start to add back in maybe whole grain breads, right? Or maybe you start to reintroduce dairy into your body. It just, you can kind of go through it at your own pace. Or if you want to, you could say, you could start from the other end where you're only removing one ingredient, like, hey, I'm going to remove dairy from my diet. I'm going to stop eating cheeses. I'm going to stop drinking milk for just a period of time, maybe 2 weeks, and then reintroduce it and see if that really makes a change. So this is how I think about problems like this. Let's look at the system. Let's look at the kind of the inputs and outputs. And yeah, it's nerdy, but it's shown to be very successful for a lot of people. and hopefully this is maybe a couple of aha moments for you. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions or if you're going to attempt this. And good luck. So Mark Roberts with Journeyman Fitness.